Welcome all. Thank you for tuning in to Cedarly Radio, your guide to films playing at the Art House for the week of September 6th to September 12th. My name is Aaron Spears.
And I'm Dave Huffman. On this week's episode, we'll be discussing Brittany Runs a Marathon and David Crosby, Remember My Name.
We'll also be discussing the musical docs. They just keep on coming out, and director's cuts are being released into the theater now, as well as our Cedarly 3 picks for films with determined characters. Well, we always like to start off the show with the last scene first, because we're a little backwards that way. Dave, what was the last film you've seen?
The last movie I saw was the new documentary that's on Hulu. It's the Harvey Weinstein documentary, Untouchable.
Oh.
Yes. So, that's a real fun time.
Yeah.
But it is, of course, a compelling story listening to these, people talk about, some of his victims are talking in the film, as well as people that used to work for him. So you're getting a little bit, obviously, some firsthand accounts of his, abhorrent behavior. But the film itself was not much, quite frankly. It almost seems like they should have waited until the whole, all the trial and everything else and done a little bit deeper of a dive. This is not going to be the definitive film on the Harvey Weinstein scandal and everything. But it certainly is interesting, and it's, tragic and sad what some of these people had to suffer at the hands of this monster who... I just never really liked the man to begin with, and he was always sort of the bane of a lot of people's existence in the exhibition world.
For far different reasons.
Yeah, for far different reasons. I mean, but it just shows that he had a complete disregard for his actions and the impact they had on others, even on how it touched my life. You know what I mean?
Right.
In that he was notorious for just pulling films out of release, changing release dates literally at the last minute.
Yeah.
We would have films booked to open on a holiday weekend, and then you'd be like, oh no, now we're not opening that market. And you're like, well, it's 4 days before that movie was supposed to open, and we have nothing else to play, like that kind of thing. So you have to hustle to try to fill scheduling holes. And it didn't just happen once; it happened frequently. So he was kind of dealing with his companies was always terrible, and it all came from him. So it literally. He made those decisions. He's the one that did it.
Right.
And he's a terrible human being.
He's a film booking bully amongst, far more worse crimes too.
Yes. But moving release dates is at the very bottom of the things that he did.
100%. Yeah.
but it just shows that he has a complete disregard for anybody else's.
For anybody else, for others.
Anybody else other than himself. And he deserves any punishment he gets as long as it's very severe. That's all I can say.
Yeah. Was it even on the tiered list of horrible things he's known for too? I'd forgotten because of the more recent revelations in the last couple of years. He had that nickname in the 90s of Harvey Scissorhands, where he would take auteurs or directors' work and just snip it to shreds or redo the whole thing and put it out, or just bury the movie, like you said, and just never see the light of day if you didn't want to get it out there.
I had a filmmaker who's one of our guests at Provincetown, an incredibly nice guy who I won't talk about the film specifically or him by name, but he was in the midst of one of those things right then with Weinstein, and what we played at the festival was this director's version of the movie that Weinstein wanted to hack up.
Right.
His film ended up winning an award, and he was like, this is great because this is going to help me prove that my version of this movie is the right one. And then the one that ended up getting released was savaged by critics. And even when I finally watched that, I'm like, well, it's not a bad movie. It's charming. I liked it. And but it's just sad because this person's career was really derailed by this, cinematic bully who just hacked up his movie. So, yeah, it happened to a lot of people.
Longtime listeners of this particular podcast will know previously we've been beeping out anytime we had to mention his name. So I feel like since it's related to the documentary, I can't beep out all of these because nobody will know what we're talking about. But
yeah, he's the Voldemort of the cinema world.
He should not be named or beeped out when he is named.
And what was the last film you saw, Aaron?
Well, usually we keep these secret, but we happened to be texting last night. So now you're aware of what my last scene is. Because last night I settled down at 11:30 p.m. and watched The Beach Bum, Harmony Korine's film that I missed in theaters because it kind of just came and went a little too quick for me in this one. I realized with certain directors, like Harmony Korine is a perfect example of it. I didn't even look up reviews. So like I know I wanted to watch it. I couldn't wait to watch it, and then I did watch it. I loved it. I would say it's easily in my top 5 of the year. But then I went to see what some of my favorite critics wrote about it. I was like, oh God, this movie was not very well received. It was like 53 on Metacritic, 56 on Rotten Tomatoes, 30% audience score.
Yeah, it wasn't universally panned, but not everybody.
I found some good ones, but
yeah. And I liked it as well. I thought it was a lot of fun. I thought it was funny. I mean, he was just having a blast, I felt like.
Oh, yeah.
And the two of them were just kind of right in sync for that wonderful kind of stoner drifter character.
Yeah. I don't know. I would say it's one of those, I would recommend watching it if you... you know what you're getting into. I wouldn't just like recommend it to my neighbor who's like, hey, what's a good comedy? And I'm like, well, maybe not The Beach Bum right away, but if you're really into film and interested and you know who Harmony Korine is, I mean, it's definitely worth checking out and watching it. It's still fresh in my mind. I watched it last night, went to bed, got up, we're recording. So, it's just my initial reaction was one of, I'm in love with the movie. I like it a lot.
Did you enjoy Snoop Dogg?
I did. I mean, he's playing a character named Lingerie, but he's playing Snoop Dogg. It's pretty clear. And the cast itself is nuts too. It's also the effect of it's such a stacked cast that by the time Zac Efron pops up, and my favorite cameo performance of the year by far is just like this vaping. It's just oh God, he's crazy. I forgot he was even in the movie, so it pops up like, oh, that's right, this guy. And then Martin Lawrence pops up. Oh, I forgot he was in the movie too. But it almost has like it doesn't really go on the road necessarily, but it almost has a road movie quality where he just sort of like wanders from scenario to scenario, even if he's not really going too far.
Right, that's true. Like, has there ever been? You always think about road movies as being something that
point
really
A to
takes,
point B.
And a greater distance is traveled, or some distance is traveled.
Right.
But this is sort of like
it's a boat movie, I guess.
Yeah, but it's like the local road movie in a way. Like, it's very episodic, and it is kind of structured like a road movie, but not really being on the road.
Right. All right, so Dave, your last scene is Untouchable. You said that was a streaming. You said Hulu?
I think it's on Hulu, and I would say it's moderately recommended. It's certainly not bad, but it's not quite the essential film I think that will be made someday about this whole scandal.
And mine is The Beach Bum, as I mentioned. With caution, if you know what you're into, I would highly recommend it, but would say maybe not necessarily for the casual comedy fan that isn't familiar with Harmony Korine's work. Well, in a new segment we wanted to start up here on the show is Just Booked, Coming Soon Movies, get you hyped up and let you know that you need to clear your schedule in the next couple weeks because there's some stuff coming up, especially as we get to the fall. I mean, there's a lot of awards contender movies coming out, and I don't know. Do you think the Downton Abbey film is an awards contender, Dave?
I think it'll probably be an awards contender, at least in some technical categories, like costumes and
for
things
sure.
like that. I haven't gotten to see the film yet, but I've talked to a couple of people that have, and they really liked it and they were charmed by it. But that is sort of the Downton Abbey movie is right now kind of the
very prestigious
I was going to say it's like the Avengers for the art house world.
Oh,
you know
sure,
what I mean?
yeah.
It is kind of this giant kind of art house behemoth that's lurking right around the corner, and so much so that Focus Features, who's releasing it, it's officially opening on the 20th. And as we all know, for the last few years, movie studios have been doing Thursday night advance shows. So it opens up officially on the 20th, but there's usually shows the night before. So there's shows on the 19th. But then because this is Downton Abbey and there's such a fan demand for it, they're actually doing a fan kind of advance screening on the 12th. So there's actually going to be a screening of Downton Abbey a week before it opens that's open to the public. And that is going to be on Thursday the 12th here at the Cedar
at 7 p.m.
At 7 p.m. And then for the 19th, we are doing a special event that we're calling the Royal Tea Cocktail Party. And that's going to be at 6 o'clock on the 19th. So if you buy a ticket to that, which is $10, and that's only available at the concession stand, it doesn't include admission to the movie, so you have to buy a separate ticket for the film. But with that, you're going to get a complimentary tea or cocktail and a little dessert plate and popcorn and drink whenever you watch the movie. Plus, you get to be the first people admitted to the auditorium, and that'll be for the 7 o'clock show on the 19th.
You promoting tuxedos, period piece evening wear, anything like that?
Well, we do say dress to impress.
There you go.
So, I don't know that we're going to kick anybody out if they're not in their formal dinner wear.
Right, yeah.
Yes.
So, I must confess, I have seen no Downton Abbey at all.
What?
So, I know that the show was wrapped up. It went through, what was like six seasons. I don't know how they call it in British television terms.
They call them series.
There were
in
6
England,
series.
yes, but yes.
So is this a kind of continuation of the story? Does it build on what they've done there? Okay.
It is, but it also just has kind of like blowing out all the stops. Like the plot of this is that the king and queen are actually coming to Downton Abbey for a royal visit. So they are getting everything in order, in preparation for that momentous visit.
All right, and we will be right back with the new films opening up this week at the theater.
And the first film that we're opening up this week is Brittany Runs a Marathon, directed by Paul Downs Colaizzo. And that is a new comedy starring Jillian Bell about a young woman who decides to make a positive change in her life by training for the New York Marathon.
I need to get a teeny bit healthier.
We have rates as low as $129 a month.
You do know that people can run outside. That is zero. I'm blocked. I ran today.
Why the hell you do that? Somebody chasing you or something? You can do it.
Yeah, I know. I'm doing it.
Sorry, I'm talking to myself.
My sister, she owns a company, house and pet sitting.
All right, I'll stay.
Bad taste in music. You the new girl? I'm the nighttime guy, Jaren.
I'm done with the drinking, I'm done with the smoking.
50,000 people from around the world are racing today. I want to run the New York City Marathon.
I think that is such a good idea.
That's a bad omen.
I'm exhausted just thinking about training for a marathon.
I started running just briefly like a little while ago, and that didn't last too long because it turns out I just don't enjoy that at all.
Yeah.
And I know that some people just like love it.
Yep.
But no, not so much me.
Yeah.
But this film, I did love. I absolutely highly recommend Brittany Runs a Marathon. It is very funny. It's very heartfelt. She is fantastic in it. Jillian Bell gives a great performance. She's always been a scene stealer in the TV and the films that she has done. If you've watched the show Workaholics on Comedy Central, she's kind of like the office sort of assistant in that, or the manager's assistant, and she just has the best lines and just is really weird. And in the shockingly entertaining sequel 22 Jump Street, she was the villain in that, and she is hilarious in it. I mean, she is just really great, and this was excellent because you get to see her do the kind of comedy that she does just perfectly. But like we were talking about a few weeks ago when we talk about comedic actors or people known primarily for being comedians doing dramatic work, she's got some great dramatic moments in this. It is just heart-wrenching and effective and just really great. So and it's based on a true story about this woman who was trying to turn her life around by setting this goal for herself and making sure that she met it.
Usually those like life goal advice things are like pick a manageable little task and then just complete that, then build from there. It's not run a marathon. Yeah. Now start training for that as your goal, because it's so easy to just be like, there's no way I'm not gonna be able to do it. Like we just both said.
Yeah, I would not be able to do it.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't have that kind of motivation or interest because I have a car that can drive 26 point whatever miles a marathon is. I don't need to run that. I can just take my car.
So I was looking up, I wasn't really sure where I first saw Jillian Bell at. And I was looking up her filmography, and as you said, like kind of being a scene stealer, she blended in so well with the cast of 2 different Paul Thomas Anderson movies that I didn't realize she was even in those movies until I saw it in her filmography. But it does make sense because she auditioned for Saturday Night Live, didn't get in the cast, but became a writer for a few seasons. And Paul Thomas Anderson is like weirdly obsessed with Saturday Night Live to the point where he and Maya Rudolph have been together for years as a personal relationship, but also like Adam Sandler. He's always grabbing comedians to put into his non-comedy films as well. That it made perfect sense that she would eventually pop up in a couple of his films. The second film we are opening up this week is another in the long line of high-quality music documentaries. We are opening David Crosby, Remember My Name, where it's described as meet David Crosby in this portrait of a man with everything but an easy retirement on his mind.
Do you ever wonder why you are still alive?
I don't know. No idea, man. I'm 76 years old. I've had 3 heart attacks. I've got 8 stents in my heart.
I don't think people know how sick he really is.
The last few years, I made 4 solo albums. I'm going for 5.
If I had ever been it before I would follow.
I was not easy. Big ego, no brains. I don't think I was a good lover. I think I was selfish.
If I had ever been it before.
I had fallen in love with Christine. All of a sudden, she didn't come home. There's just this emptiness, this gone. You know, it's like a rip in the fabric. A friend of mine gave me a shot of heroin. Feels great. Only the first time. After that, you're just trying to catch it, and you never get back there. Ever. That's the house our house was written about, right there. That's where Crosby, Stills, and Nash sang their first song together.
He became a fugitive from the law.
I got a ride to the local FBI agency. He said, "You're looking for me. My name's David Crosby."
This is the first interview that we ever did.
My father says that money, glory, fame, chicks, none of it counts. The only thing counts is whether you got any friends.
What happened to your friends?
All the guys that I made music with won't even talk to me. All of them.
This is another musician that, thanks to this movie, I'm now aware of. Just like it was Crosby, Stills, Nash or Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young were never bands that I was super into.
Right.
So I just really didn't follow his career. But this guy just cannot stop.
David Crosby, he's someone who's been around for decades and decades and decades, and his music career is going strong, and was even in one of our big hits from the summer here. He's of course featured in Echo in the Canyon because that's he was right there at the same time and in the canyon and friends with all of those people. So he was interviewed pretty extensively in that film. I remember him being one of the talking heads in that quite a bit. And now this is a film just about him and his career.
Like he was in, he just was one of those that he hopped around for a while too before he just landed with Crosby, Stills, Nash or Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, where he was around the Birds. He did a performance at Buffalo Springfield at Monterey Pop. Not exactly an unheard of performance there. I did see on some bio I was reading of him that Crosby, Stills, and Nash, when it later became Young, their second concert ever, according to this article, was Woodstock. Like, how intimidating would that be?
That's a really good booking.
But yeah, it really is. Yeah. Hey, second concert. Look what we got booked for us. Although, I mean, going into Woodstock, obviously, it was thought it was going to be a disaster. So, it wasn't exactly, nobody thought it was going to be what it became before it actually just happened. But it's another one of those music docs that even if you're just a casual fan, you're going to get to know a lot more about David Crosby. And if you are just a fan, it's a great document of his life and work up till right now.
And we want to kind of expand a little bit of the reach here at the Cedar Radio and talk about some of the things that are happening at some of our sister theaters, which the main thing I wanted to talk about was the fact that at the Capitol last weekend, we brought back Midsummer for its director's cut theatrical run. And it did so well that we're holding on to it for a second week. So I'd encourage people, if you haven't had a chance to see Midsummer, the excellent and highly well-reviewed horror film from Ari Aster from this last summer, I'd recommend you getting over there to see it. It'll be there for at least another week. And it has an additional 24 minutes of footage. So this is an epic art house horror film that is now almost 3 hours long. So, and it's just as compelling. I went to see it again this weekend, and I still love that movie. The
director's cut used to be a thing that you'd get on, I don't really remember in the VHS days. Laserdisc definitely had some director's cuts, but DVD really exploded with special features, director's cuts. How many DVDs over the years have you watched a director's cut and been like, I want to see that on the big screen?
Quite a few.
And you don't really get to normally.
Yeah. And so when they had announced, shortly after this film was released, they announced that there was going to be this director's cut, when I just naturally assumed it was just going to be available video on demand or on DVD or Blu-ray or whatever. And there was no mention that they were going to do a theatrical release. But now, again, because of digital cinema, they don't have the expense of having to spend $2,500 to make a print for all of these. So the expense of releasing something is considerably lower now. So this last weekend, not only was Midsummer director's cut released, but there was even an extended edition of, Spider-Man Far From Home. So the studios are more willing to kind of take a chance on putting out these slightly expanded editions of the films and giving them a little bit longer of a theatrical run. So
I'm resisting the temptation to be a cynic and just be like, it's a money grab. They just want more money. But if you're a fan of the movie, you get to see a longer version of the movie on the big screen with the crowd too. I mean, that's the way to go anyway. So I
would say some of them definitely are money grabs. Like this last summer, whenever they did the Avengers thing, which was totally just a money grab. But, this one is a legitimate thing where there's this a substantial amount of footage with some critical scenes put back in. That he had to take out for running time concerns initially. Although at a certain point, it's like if your movie's already 2.5 hours long, adding that extra 20 minutes or whatever to it isn't killing it. You know what I mean? So I thought it was kind of funny that they were so adamant about cutting it down. But
right. Especially in the era of binge watching, hours and hours and hours and hours at a time. Like, come on, it's also getting your money's worth there too in the theater setting. I was thinking how many times I've got a director's cut over the years where it's like 2 extra minutes, or you're waiting to see what the extra stuff is. And you're like, that was it?
Right.
20 minutes is a good substantial amount.
Now, I've determined that I will never watch another version of Blade Runner, no matter how many of those he puts out, because I keep watching it and I just always think it's meh. But anyway.
What if there's like a 20-minute version that comes out?
Well, but, like this last one was like the final cut.
Right.
Now, I guarantee in a few years or after, there's going to be some other version of that movie. And, they're going to that's the movie that has the most versions of it out. Although there's now just a new version of Apocalypse Now that's
true.
coming out as well. So, yes.
Several versions of that already, too.
Yeah, several versions of that too.
Cool. Well, we will be right back with our Cedarly 3 list for this week. Well, each week we like to take inspiration from one of the new films and suggest 3 films to broaden your cinematic world. This week's topic was inspired by Brittany Runs a Marathon, where Brittany becomes determined to, guess what, run a marathon. So she's setting her sights to try to accomplish a specific goal. So we thought, let's take a look at determined characters with specific goals. Too broad, Dave? Too narrow?
No, I think, there's certainly a lot of things that could fit this subject. So it is kind of broad, but at the same time, since we talked about obsessed characters and some other things, I was trying to avoid some of those and focus a little bit more on just goal-oriented kind of things.
Right.
Although one of them is about an obsessed person.
Well, I mean, you could be obsessed with your goal too. And
right.
I ran into that too. I just started writing down movie titles and I was like, wait, I've already used that one. Cross it off. Oh, I used that one too, I think. Okay, cross that one off. It was like, all right, I need to broaden my cinematic world and get beyond like my Blu-ray collection when I browse titles.
We're running out of movies. No. So the first one I want to talk about is Muriel's Wedding from 1994 by P.J. Hogan, starring, of course, Toni Collette, the film that sort of launched her career. And it's all about this sad sack woman who is, lives in this sort of fantasy world filled with ABBA music. And her only thing that matters to her is getting married. Like, to her, that is the ultimate goal in life, is getting married. So when an opportunity arises for her to get married, it doesn't even matter that she doesn't really know the guy or whatever. Like, it's just that she's getting married and she's achieving her goal. And of course, and then she starts to realize, oh, maybe there's more to life than this. But it's one of my favorite movies. I love that film. I haven't watched it in quite a while, but it's just got a fantastic performance by her. Of course, great music, and it's certainly better than watching any of the Mamma Mia movies. So if you're gonna watch an ABBA-filled movie, watch Muriel's Wedding.
Yeah. So the first one I thought of, it was just because I was watching the trailer for the new Super Size Me. We'll talk about that in just a moment, and thinking about the original movie, The Founder popped up, the Michael Keaton film, where he plays Ray Kroc and founds McDonald's, which wasn't like a great movie. It's a very compelling story, and Michael Keaton, I'll give the caveat, when Michael Keaton gets the right role, I really enjoy watching him, because going through his filmography, I've skipped a lot of stuff like 90s and into the 2000s. I was like, no thanks. But when he gets the right role, and this is one of those, like, he's charming, he's a little slimy at times, at most of the time, really.
Yeah, I was going to say, not a likable person.
Right. And there's some stuff, if you look through the subtext there, of sort of the dangers of just like, unrestricted capitalism and predatory capitalism and all kinds of stuff in there. But his performance is great, and as he, literally kind of steals an idea and figures out a way to legally do it, and he gave the world McDonald's. Yay.
Thanks, Ray.
Appreciate it.
Well, the next one on my list, and as I was trying to think of these, I actually had a hard time coming up with ones that I thought really worked, but this was one that popped into my head because it's a genre of films that I love, and that's movies about kind of obsessed characters who kidnap people or want to do whatever it takes to make them love them.
Okay.
And so
that is very specific.
It is, and I don't know why. And of course, the gender politics of this film is highly questionable, even at the time it was released.
Is this an Almodovar film?
It is. It's Tie Me Up, Tie Me Down.
Okay.
So, with,
I was thinking of The Skin I Live In. Sorry.
That's a great one too. Yeah, that one totally works.
He's working through some themes there, isn't he?
Yeah, exactly. So I love Almodovar's movies, and Tie Me Up, Tie Me Down isn't probably one of his best films, but it's one of his more notorious ones. And I really do like it quite a bit. I remember it was very controversial when it came out. I think it was either unrated or NC-17. And I enjoy that movie. Although, like I say, it's certainly, it's about a mentally ill man that kidnaps a woman and is, his goal is to make her love him.
Yeah.
And in sort of, Stockholm Syndrome manner, I guess that can happen.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't recommend that as a dating option.
No.
But
luckily there's no app for that yet.
No. As we're getting ready for the new Almodovar movie, Pain and Glory, which is going to be opening here November 8th, I believe, here at the Cedar Lee, it's just time for me to go back and revisit some Almodovar because I love him so much. And what's next on your list,
Next
sir?
one on my list, I was kind of going back and forth between two different kind of revenge ones because those are, nothing makes a character more determined than the pure need for revenge.
Yeah.
So I went with 1974's Foxy Brown, Jack Hill film featuring Pam Grier, who is avenging the murder of her boyfriend. So it's kind of one of those it's such a almost like a Kill Bill template. Tarantino is clearly inspired by a lot of classic Pam Grier films in specific. But if you haven't seen Foxy Brown, it's a very determined character. It's also a very fun movie. Great music, great performance. Needs to be watched.
Well, I love Pam Grier and I love all of those classic films. I'm a huge fan of kind of 70s blaxploitation cinema. I'm very excited for Dolomite Is My Name, which we are actually also going to be playing here at the Cedar Lee. It's a Netflix movie, but we are going to be playing that one. It's going to be coming here on October 18th. So if you're a fan of that stuff, we showed Dolomite a few years ago. For the Late Shift. And the last one on my on my list is Wild from 2014 with Reese Witherspoon by Jean-Marc Vallée, and that is about a woman who is kind of her goal is she's going to hike this 1,000-mile trail as sort of a goal towards her keeping her sobriety and her life on track, and it's a great film and a really fantastic performance by Reese Witherspoon. She was Oscar nominated for it, and I just love that movie. It was really a beautiful film to see in the theater. I haven't watched it since then though, but I really liked it.
I forgot all about that movie. I am gonna have to put that on my list because I did not see it.
Oh yeah, it's excellent. I would really recommend it. Yeah, it's one of those ones that when I was first reading about it, when it was playing, I think it played at Toronto, I was like, meh, it probably isn't as good as people are saying it is. And,
festival
sometimes festival hype or just a big star who did the right kind of publicity junket is getting the right kind of thing. But no, it's a great movie. Yeah. And Laura Dern's in it as well. It's very, very good.
Well, that sells me even further then because I'll watch anything Laura Dern's doing. The last one I went with is Die Hard with a Vengeance. My favorite of the Die Hard films.
Really?
Yeah. I don't know what it caught.
How is that possible that is your favorite?
It's the chemistry between Bruce Willis and Sam Jackson that really sold it for me. But also, Jeremy Irons doesn't get enough credit as a great, great villain in this movie as Simon Gruber,
villain.
The brother, which he's doing this whole, hold the city hostage, all the riddles and all this craziness. And it's an absurd, crazy action movie, which, John McTiernan is no slouch in the action film department. So it's very well directed and choreographed, I think. And the clues and the puzzles keep it fun and comedic. But at the same time, it turns out they put another layer on top of it, and it's a revenge plot because, he's Hans Gruber's brother and he wants to torture, mentally John McClane before he, hopes to kill him, which obviously doesn't work because it's Die Hard and he's a superhero at this point. But I thought that's a really determined... Villains are always the determined characters because they always have a mission they're going for.
Yes.
So I didn't want to do an all-villain list, but when I was thinking of villains, it was that is a really fun villain. You could do a Hannibal Lecter or whatever, but, that's not quite as determined as Jeremy Irons' Simon Gruber is.
When was the last time you saw that film?
Probably 3 years ago.
Oh, okay. I was just curious. The last time I saw that was 1995 when it played in the theater. So I've
seen it probably 20 times. I would just put it on in the background, or I would watch Die Hard at Christmas, and I would just plow through all three of them.
Well, I will revisit it, but I remember really not liking that one. So it'll be interesting to see if I change my opinion on it.
Well, remember, I'm not arguing that it's a great movie.
Oh, no.
I'm saying there's a really driven character who's determined to achieve his specific goals.
Enough time may have passed as well where I will reappreciate it for just cheesy fun.
Oh,
you know
yeah.
what I mean? Whereas I think the first Die Hard movie is basically like an action movie masterpiece.
It is.
The
It's a
second
template
one is
movie.
an extremely strong sequel. It's very good. And I think it is.
Yeah,
and then this one, I was just like, I see what they're trying to do.
Yeah.
Like expand the world, but it just didn't work for me. And I didn't like that they turned it into sort of like a
The revenge
comedy
one.
buddy movie.
Oh, yeah,
and
yeah.
stuff. It didn't work for me. So I felt like they were just abandoning the sort of
the concept of Die Hard.
The concept of Die Hard. I felt like they pulled the rug out from under me.
I will say, just to wrap it up, it is the Die Hard franchise film that jumps the shark and allows the rest of the nonsense to happen, which I have not kept up with. But it is the one where he always was sort of like a superhero, almost level, protagonist. But that's the one where you're just like, no.
Well, I think it's the last Die Hard movie with his son is in it.
The one in Russia?
The one with the Russians.
Okay.
It is just terrible beyond words, and also has one of my bad screenplay like signs. Like if whenever you're talking to someone, you very rarely say their name. Like in the real world, like I don't start every sentence by saying hi, Aaron, or Aaron, what do you think of this? You know what I mean?
Right.
In that movie, they say John, like I think he doesn't call him Dad, he calls him John. So like he always is saying John. Like it's almost, if you made it into a drinking game, you die of alcohol poisoning.
Right.
Because like his name is said like so many times.
Yeah.
It's frustratingly annoying. So don't watch that one. But apparently Aaron says watch Die Hard with a Vengeance.
Yes. Well, next week's episode, we'll be discussing 4 new films as of right now. We're going to have Super Size Me 2, Holy Chicken! It's got an exclamation point, so you have to say it that way.
It does have an
That's just the way you
exclamation
do
point.
it. Linda Ronstadt, The Sound of My Voice, The Goldfinch, and Fiddler, A Miracle of Miracles. So next week's Cedarly 3, we are inspired by Super Size Me 2, Holy Chicken! And we're going to be taking a look at food documentaries, which is a topic I can't believe we haven't done before, but that'll be a new one for us. So also the caveat of like food documentaries coming from an art house perspective, from a vegan perspective in your case, vegetarian perspective here. There may be some agendas going on next week. Just a heads up there on that one. If you have any food docs you'd like to submit, you can always submit your picks at Cedarly Theater using the hashtag Cedarly3, the number 3. But before we sign off for this week, we do want to let you know about a few special events we have coming up.
This week we have the Melt Bar and Grilled Late Shift presents Pulp Fiction for its 25th anniversary. That'll be playing Saturday, September 7th at 9:30 p.m. and Sunday, September 8th at 7 o'clock p.m.
And as usual, the Melt Bar and Grill Late Shift series also features every month the Rocky Horror Picture Show. The first Saturday of every month, that is Saturday, September 7th, this month at midnight.
And then, as mentioned earlier, we have a special advance fan screening of the Downton Abbey movie on Thursday, September 12th at 7 p.m.
And finally, the 13th annual Mandel JCC Cleveland Jewish Film Fest kicks off on September 5th through 15th. Visit mandeljcc.org for film titles, location, times, and tickets. As always, thank you for tuning in to Cedarly Radio and lending us your ears this week. All the music heard on the show is original music written by Grant Heineman and performed by the New Heights Jazz Ensemble, used with their permission, of course. Visit clevelandcinemas.com for correct showtimes and to purchase advance tickets. Also, there are links in the show notes. You can use those if you'd like as well. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We are at Cedarly Theater, spelled with an R-E at the end because we're fancy like that. Don't forget to subscribe to the show wherever you find your podcast, and while you're subscribing, leave us a rating and review, or better yet, tell a fellow film geek about the show. We'll see you at the movies.